What if the pressure you feel right now isn't proof that you're failing, but evidence that you're closer to breakthrough than you've ever been? You see the resistance, the delays, the unexpected setbacks, and your mind whispers that you're going backward. Yet in the spiritual realm, intense opposition often signals imminent release. The first shocking sign you're closer to breakthrough than you think is heightened warfare. Suddenly everything feels harder, temptations intensify, distractions multiply, misunderstandings increase, and small problems feel amplified. Ephesians 6:12 reminds you that your struggle is not against flesh and blood, and when the enemy senses that something significant is about to shift in your favor, resistance escalates. Think about Daniel in Daniel 10:12-13. His answer was dispatched from the first day he prayed, yet spiritual opposition delayed manifestation. The delay was not denial, it was conflict in the unseen realm. If you're experiencing unusual resistance, it may not mean you're off track. It may mean your prayers have already stirred movement. The second sign is deep internal stretching. You feel uncomfortable in ways you can't fully explain, as if old mindsets no longer fit, but new clarity hasn't fully formed. This tension can feel confusing, but it's often transformation in progress. Romans 5 verse 3-5 reveals that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance produces character, and character produces hope. Breakthrough doesn't just change circumstances, it requires a changed vessel. God will stretch your patience before He expands your influence, refine your humility before He increases your visibility, deepen your faith before He releases the promise. If you feel pressed but not crushed, strained but not destroyed, you may be in the exact place where capacity is expanding. The third hidden sign is divine detachment. Things that once satisfied you no longer do. Relationships shift, old habits lose their grip, and what used to excite you feels strangely empty. That emptiness can feel like loss, but it is often preparation. Isaiah 43:19 declares that God is doing a new thing, and new things require room. Before Joseph stepped into leadership in Genesis 41, he had to be separated from comfort, familiarity, and even fairness. God sometimes removes what you've outgrown before He reveals what's next. If doors are closing and you feel unsettled, it may not be punishment, it may be positioning. The fourth sign is a renewed hunger for God in the middle of difficulty. When breakthrough approaches, complacency becomes intolerable. You start craving deeper prayer, stronger discipline, sharper discernment. Jeremiah 29 verse 13 says you will seek Him and find Him when you seek Him with all your heart. And that intensified seeking often precedes divine movement. You might not feel constant emotional highs, but you sense a deeper urgency, a quiet conviction that you cannot remain spiritually passive. That hunger is not random, it is alignment. God often stirs desire before He releases destiny. The fifth sign is that clarity begins to emerge in fragments, not the full blueprint, not the entire timeline, but glimpses. Psalm 109 verse 105 calls His word a lamp to your feet, not a spotlight to the horizon. You start seeing the next step more clearly, even if the 10th step remains hidden. That partial clarity is a signal that transition is near. God rarely reveals everything at once because faith grows in increments. Another overlooked sign is unexpected peace in the middle of unresolved circumstances. Philippians 4:7 speaks of the peace of God that surpasses understanding, guarding your heart and mind. When peace shows up before the problem leaves, something spiritual is shifting. Peace becomes confirmation that heaven is stabilizing you for what's coming. The enemy thrives on panic, so when peace anchors you despite uncertainty, it indicates alignment with God's timing. You may also notice increased testing of your character right before breakthrough. Temptations surface that mirror old weaknesses. Opportunities arise to compromise integrity, and subtle shortcuts appear. This is not coincidence, it is examination. Luke 16 verse 10 reminds you that faithfulness in small things determines readiness for greater ones. Breakthrough without integrity becomes downfall. If you are being tested, it may be because promotion requires proof of stability. Consider David, anointed in 1 Samuel 16, yet years of obscurity and testing followed before the throne. The anointing came early. The appointment required process. If your integrity is under pressure, your promotion may be closer than you think. Another sign is emotional exhaustion paired with stubborn faith. You feel tired, but quitting no longer feels like an option. Galatians 6:9 urges you not to grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time you will reap a harvest if you do not give up. That verse implies that weariness often precedes harvest. The enemy intensifies discouragement right before release, hoping you will abandon the field before the crop emerges. If you feel like you're at your limit, but something inside you refuses to surrender, that resilience is evidence of divine reinforcement. You are being sustained because you are near something significant. You may also experience divine pruning. Relationships shift, distractions fall away, certain opportunities disappear. John 15:2 says he prunes every branch that bears fruit so it will be even more fruitful. Pruning feels like loss before it produces multiplication. If God is removing distractions, trimming excess, narrowing your focus, it is not cruelty, it is preparation. Breakthrough demands clarity. Excess weight slows destiny. Pruning is painful, but it is purposeful. There's also a subtle sign many overlook: increased opposition in your thoughts. Doubt becomes louder, fear more persistent, old insecurities resurface. Why would mental warfare intensify unless something valuable is approaching? 2 Corinthians 10:5 speaks of taking every thought captive. When the mind becomes a battlefield, it often indicates that the enemy is attempting to disrupt alignment before manifestation. The louder the lies, the closer the truth may be to appearing. Remember Joshua at the edge of the promised land in Joshua 1. Fear had to be confronted before territory could be claimed. The promise existed, but courage was required to step into it. Sometimes breakthrough is not a sudden miracle, but a bold step of obedience into what God has already declared. Another powerful sign is that your perspective shifts. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking, "What is God forming in me?" Romans 8:28 assures that all things work together for good for those who love Him. When you start interpreting challenges through that lens, your mindset aligns with heaven's agenda. Perspective change is not small, it is foundational. Breakthrough often begins in your thinking before it appears in your circumstances. And perhaps the most profound sign is gratitude emerging in difficulty. When you can thank God before the answer arrives, when you can worship before the door opens, when you can declare trust while evidence is still forming, you are operating in mature faith. Hebrews 11:1 defines faith as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. When gratitude surfaces in uncertainty, faith has matured. Breakthrough gravitates toward mature faith because mature faith can steward it. The warning is this: the final stretch is often the hardest. Labor intensifies before birth. Darkness feels thickest before dawn. If you misinterpret pressure as failure, you may retreat at the very edge of promise. But if you recognize pressure as preparation, you will stand firm. Do not let increased resistance convince you to withdraw. Do not let delayed results distort your perception. Do not let fatigue silence your obedience. If God has been refining you, pruning you, stretching you, testing you, aligning you, stirring hunger within you, granting peace in chaos, and sustaining your faith despite exhaustion, you are not stuck, you are approaching. Breakthrough is not always loud. Sometimes it arrives quietly after relentless consistency. Hold your ground, guard your mind, deepen your obedience, persist in prayer, trust beyond what you see. Because the same God who promised in Hebrews 13:5 to never leave you nor forsake you has not brought you this far to abandon you at the threshold. Stay faithful in the pressure, and when the door opens, you will realize the struggle was not a sign of distance, but proof that you were closer than you ever imagined.